This is Valley of Tears from MMP Games. This is the Battalion Combat Series. I'm just giving you an update on the situation at the end of the first day. We'll do the Sinai front first. This is a difficult one for the Arabs because you can't get any vehicles across the canal on day one. The only thing you can do is move leg units and they can cross, but it costs them the entire unit, entire movement. Now, they've attacked a lot of the Bar-Lev forts and successfully knocked them out, but they've not knocked them all out. There's still a couple of Bar-Lev forts that they couldn't take. Now, the restrictions on the canals, there's almost nothing you can do. You can't engage, you can't do fire combat, you can't do barrages, you can't do engagements, but you can assist. Now, what I've done, the Arabs had quite a lot of close air support, and I've allowed them to use close air support attacks on the forts. Now, it doesn't say you can do that. It sort of says that, well, they're technically barrages, so you can't do it, but I've allowed them to do it. Some people go, ooh, but anyway, that was my interpretation of it. So they've got a lot of infantry units across, and they've moved their HQs right up to the canal, ready to cross as soon as possible. Now the Israelis, they've got 2 units on the Sinai, a territorial unit and a division. I think it's the not actually sure, 252nd Division. Now, like all Israeli units, mobile units, they're very high quality. They've got good activity ratings. They've even got ranges when they're in the mobile side, which is something Arab armour doesn't have. Now, they've really moved into a series of defensive positions. They've not done anything like what the Israelis did in reality. They didn't go charging in to try and save those forts. Now, the thing about the forts is they are in a very poor state with activity ratings of 3 and stuff like that compared to the Golan ones, which are mainly 5s. And there's a reason for that, that the Israelis were sort of umming and ahhing over whether the Bar-Lev line was actually worth the effort and the cost, and wouldn't it have been better just to sort of engage the Egyptians in mobile combat as soon as possible. Certain Israeli strategic planners were saying you're going to end up sort of trying to relieve those forts instead of preparing for fighting a mobile war. Now, we haven't actually done that. The Israelis have moved into like a covering positions. They've got the advantage. They can't suffer from isolation. So the Israelis effectively wasted their air force in giving themselves a load of ground attack capability. So there's 6 points of airstrikes there that they've not been able to do anything with. So they were wasted. They should have concentrated on attacking the Egyptian air bases and logistics, which they will do next turn. If we go over to the Golan front, again, this is like the Sinai front. Absolutely nobody, except for 1 unit, managed to get a second activation. And that second unit was a tank brigade which couldn't use it to any effectiveness because it's on the wrong side of the canal. So all these Egyptian units only got 1 activation. They all suffered a loss of fatigue as well, the 3, which was unlucky. they've sort of made a little bit of a penetration, but this is nowhere near what happened in reality. In reality, the Syrians were well across the Golan Heights by the night of the 6th. In fact, they were probably about here in terms of their advanced units. So it doesn't really reflect what happened in reality. I suppose if they'd managed to get a second activation, they would have made a big penetration into the Syrian area, but they weren't able to achieve that. Now the Israelis, yet again, all they've really done is build a solid defensive line using their mobile units just to hold the Arab armies up as much as possible. They've used the Zika unit here to attack, but that's a bit of a special unit, so even though it's isolated there, it's only a one-step unit that can actually come back. It's like a mobile firefighting task force, effectively. The Arabs have knocked out a lot of the Golan Heights fortifications, which were a lot tougher than the ones on the canal. I've captured Mount Ypom, which stops the Israelis from basically spotting air attacks all over the Golan Heights. So all in all, I know I'm just looking at the amount of armour there is for the 36th Division on the Golan Heights. It doesn't sort of tie in with what I've read about the Battle of the Golan on the first night. From what I've heard, the Israelis only had about 120 tanks on the heights. And they also ended up struggling at night because they didn't have any night sights where the Arab tanks had infrared night sights for the guns on the tanks. I've just got to assume that this is a historical order of battle for the Israelis on the Golan. I've got a book on this anyway. The Yom Kippur War, which is a big one, which is recommended. And I'll do a bit more reading, but yeah, I'm surprised at the amount of armour Israel seems to have on the heights. That's really it. It's the Arabs are there, and they've got through a lot of the fortifications, and they've got a lot of units. You know, they've got a massive advantage. But yeah, again, the quality of their units is so poor. You know, you got a lot of these tanks and infantry and activity ratings of 2, where the Israelis are at activity ratings of 5. The firepower isn't much difference. 8s and 7s, depending on which side they are, against 7s and 6s. They're really going to have to depend on numbers to win this battle, and that's what they did do. Historically, they tried to completely overwhelm the Israelis. So there we are. That's the first turn. Coming up on the second turn, across the canal, the Egyptians, all their bridges automatically become in place, so they're going to have 9 bridges over the canal. So they should be able to penetrate a reasonable distance. You just got to remember that the Arab plan wasn't really to go much further than capture these line of objectives here, about 5 miles, 10 miles from the canal. That was the idea. They weren't actually trying to reconquer the Sinai. They'd considered a plan to drive all the way to the Sinai passes, but the High Command rejected that as being well beyond their capabilities as an army. So they got limited objectives. Whereas the Syrians, yeah, the Syrians' objective really is to take the whole of the Golan back. I don't think they had any realistic idea of entering Israel proper. And even if they did, they can't because of the way the board's configured. Okay, and that's it for the first turn.